Hello and welcome to Intuitive Connection. I'm your host, intuitive counselor and spiritual guide Victoria Shaw. And today we have a guest, and I am super excited to have a conversation with her. Corinne Lebrun is a TEDx speaker, author, and the host of Wild Divine Bliss podcast, where she explores spontaneous spiritual experiences, including Kundalini type phenomenon through psychology, neuroscience, philosophy, and lived experience. So those of you who follow the show know already why I'm so excited about this conversation. Her latest book, Infinity Within, Expanding Consciousness Through Science, Mysticism, and Creative Expression, explores how science, mysticism, and creativity illuminate pathways to higher consciousness. She's been featured in the documentary Awakening the Goddess. She holds a PhD, ABD, in psychology with a focus on meditation and consciousness, a CEO strategist, certified Kundalini yoga teacher, and Shambhala Reiki healer. She bridges the rational and mystical to help people connect deeply with their soul and experience the sacred magic of being fully human. So, Corinne, welcome.
Thank you so much. I'm actually really excited for this conversation with you.
I'm really excited too. And I feel like a lot of the people that find their way to me, and definitely those who find their way to you, and it's more so now, I think, that it even was like 16 years ago when I started doing this work professionally, more and more people are having these spiritual breakthroughs, these spiritual experiences, and sometimes not knowing what they are or what to do with them. And, I had a good friend when I was in graduate school, and she had the career of her dreams, had her own business, everything was going great. And she had a bit of a meltdown. She hit a wall that led to, what she described as kind of a breakdown of, in fact, she was on the show in our first season. So her story is immortalized here. But I remember it was like a very interesting story because what she said is like, how do you know the difference between sort of having a breakdown and having a spiritual awakening? And I think
Mm.
sometimes it can look like that. And then I think other times, and this has been my experience, mainly, sometimes it can feel really amazing. And we have these peak, like mind blowing, unity experiences, and that's, how people, and I've had many guests that have these peak experiences, and they say that's what got me started on this. But either way, I think a lot of people are having these experiences nowadays. Some of them identify them as spiritual awakenings and some do not. So I'm super excited to have you on the show with your expertise to have this conversation.
Yeah. Wow. There's a lot there in what you just talked about. It really makes me think about the different ways people classify spiritual experiences. And then it also really depends on each person's life trajectory and what they're used to as well. I mean, some people really do have these life-changing, altering experiences out of trauma and introspection and realize, wait a minute, I've been leading a materialistic life and I really want to move into a different direction. And then there are other people like me and several other people many people that I know who we've always been a little weird from when we were kids. Yeah. And it's like we've always been, and these days we can't even call ourselves weird, which thank God we don't have to do that anymore. It's like we've always been very intuitive and really curious about the other world that is right in front of us, but we just cannot necessarily see with our eyes. And for me, a lot of this really began when I was a kid because I would dream about the future and I would have these, I think it's called like clairvoyant experiences of like just knowing what people were thinking. One time, like my mom was in the hospital, she almost died with her back surgery, and like nobody wanted to tell me what was going on. But I knew something was really happening. It's like it's things like that, there was always this essence of there's an otherworldly phenomenon. So I went down the rabbit hole as soon as I could read, pretty much. And so really I heard about these things like transcendent experiences. I remember stumbling on a book, which I actually still have. It's called Transcendental Meditation. And I stumbled on that book when I think I was like 14. I was like, this is the magic sauce. Like this is the key to this other world. And it really it just created such a sense of longing in me to be able to experience that oneness. And for me, this is where I feel like probably all of my other transcendent experiences were born out of that innate desire to experience this oneness, which I would get a glimpse of every now and then between waking and dreaming.
Mm.
But when it comes to like the difference, because when I've had a few, I've been blasted with a few different experiences that have been, let's say, take me from a consciousness level that is at, let's say, we're all operating at 2 octaves. If it were a piano, I mean, that's the general population. We're all operating at 2 octaves. That then took me up to 5 octaves of consciousness.
Right.
And then, when you come back down out of those, you're like, okay, well, now I'm operating in life on 2.5 octaves instead of just two. So it's those experiences that allowed me to really feel like the abrupt shift of, whoa, now I'm like completely clairvoyant. Now I can feel like a complete intense feeling of love, like, or I feel this electric energy moving through me. And what is that? Like, I had no idea what these were, these very abrupt experiences from day to day life, from into what I later learned were called Kundalini experiences. Like, I didn't even know what they were called when those would happen. So there's a real differentiator. I think my point is that for some people, we feel those abrupt shifts in consciousness as part of our life timeline. And some people are, they just live in a regular 3-dimensional world and they will have that same type of abrupt experience. And it's very, very jarring. And now, thankfully, I have a word for that. They experience ontological shock because they go 1 minute from being a very grounded scientist who didn't believe in the clairvoyant at all to all of a sudden being completely psychic, completely
Right.
clairvoyant, knowing everything. And now they have to change their entire lives.
And their entire worldview, because that's what
Eh,
ontology is.
Yeah, exactly. An entire worldview. So, we have all those different variations of what it means to tap into the greater sense of consciousness. And some people, I believe, are really led through more traumatic experiences to then go seek something more spiritual that then eventually leads them to experiencing those larger expanded states. So,
Yeah, you said
yeah.
so much in there, and I want to get to the different ways to get there because a lot of people do. They get to their breaking point, and that's when, the angels start singing. I think sometimes things have
Mm.
to crumble, in order for us to say, okay, what else is out there? I had a guest on the show, Rob Mack, and he's a positive psychology coach. And his story is, I'm on the brink of suicide. I am taking the first exploratory cut. What is that called? Trigger alert. But of my wrist,
Oh,
and yeah, and in that moment, he experienced this overwhelming sense of love and bliss. And he said, "All right, I'm going to put this down, and I'm going to give myself maybe an hour." That turned into several
so
decades and counting of his life to say, I need to know what's going on here. I need to know what this is about. There's something else out there that I didn't know about, and it's calling to me. Um,
yeah.
but
So
yeah, and I'm not saying, friends, that you need to get to that point to awaken, but sometimes I think that we do. Eckhart Tolle is another one, right? He was also on the verge of suicide, is the way I've heard. I don't know him personally, haven't interviewed him, but the way I've heard the story told by him in his teachings was that, that voice in his head got so loud that he was ready to just give it all up, and then something shifted. So I think
so
it can be that way. Okay, sorry, go
yeah,
ahead.
it definitely can. And you bring up a really good point. So most of the people that come to me over the years have been people who've just had these let's call them sudden Kundalini experiences, for better words. out of just pure, there's no trauma involved. It's just they have a spiritual longing, or maybe they don't even have a spiritual longing. And then all of a sudden, one day, it's like they can be in a chiropractic school. Like I had someone on my podcast who talked about that. They could be sitting having lunch with their father, and
Right.
it just happens just like that. And that is, those are the ones where people end up really thinking, oh my gosh, am I crazy?
Right.
This happened to me, and I don't want to tell anybody that I'm like, now I feel that sense of oneness, or I'm having this incredible feeling of love, and now I can heal people. I mean, they just don't want to talk about it.
Right.
Or suddenly they become savants. That happens as well. They just don't believe it can be really true. And that's one of the messages in my podcast is, look, we not only want to talk about those experiences, but we also now we have some scientific evidence that these things exist. I mean, the last I checked, there were over 300 people, actually, no, correction, over 900 people worldwide that have been surveyed in academic studies, who've had these experiences. And most of them, they've just been very spontaneous, which is really fascinating.
Right.
And so I don't want people to feel like they're crazy anymore, because I know I felt like I was crazy. But yet you're bringing up a really good point, circling back to what you're talking about in that complete moment of surrender.
Yeah.
That is when people oddly end up having access to, maybe it's a little bit of a different type of experience, but they feel that sense of warmth and guidance, and like the knowing that there is something protecting them, and a great feeling of love. And where I've actually seen so much of that, like I spent many years in 12-step programs, and I got to go to a lot of AA meetings. And I heard so many stories about people and watched them literally change in front of my eyes in that moment of surrender and that is part of the beauty of the 12-step program. It's something actually I put in my book, because there's a magic behind that. Let's call it the system of the 12 steps. And it is all about surrender. And that's when people do experience that, okay, I'm done. I know I can't figure this out. There's a higher power that can do it for me. And
Right.
then in that surrender is where all of a sudden that real transformation can come through, which then brings me like to another point, which I always like to talk about, is like a lot of times, and I call it New Age theory, a lot of New Age perspective, it's, oh, you have to be positive all the time. You have to always only think positive thoughts. You're going to draw something negative to you. And I've seen so many people beat themselves up by not being positive all the time. I have a lot to say about that, but we'll save that for maybe a different time, you know. But it just proves, I mean, beyond a shadow of the doubt, that you don't have to be positive all the time in order to access the divine.
Yeah, for
You
sure.
don't, because if people can have those moments of instantaneous transformation when they're in that moment of surrender, that
Right.
just, it's beyond proof,
It also
Yeah.
shows, I mean, it shows a lot of things because you said a lot in there too. And we'll get back to the positive, negative,
Yeah.
because no, it's an important
Yeah.
conversation for sure. Because I think sometimes people misinterpret this kind of stuff too, to say it's got to be hard. I got to get to my breaking point. Like that's spiritual
Yeah.
awakening. And I'm like, it can be. That's not what I teach. But, if whatever's happening for you right now, like use it however it
Yeah.
comes and embrace the full range of the human experience as much as you can because, that's how it works. But I also wanted to, say, because you said something else in there that I think is really important. And that is this idea of spontaneous, right?
Yeah.
Because there's so much teaching, um, both, contemporary and very traditional old school of the steps that one must take, the things that one must do to awaken spiritually. And even that phrase Kundalini, which I'm going to need you to define in a few minutes for those people who are scratching their heads going, what's that? That's part of a very ancient tradition,
Yeah.
right? That, can involve practices and things that your steps and things that you're supposed to do to reach that awakened state. And I don't think there's anything wrong with that either, friends. If you feel called to do certain practices or follow different traditions, that could very well be your soul speaking to you. But what fascinates me about what you're talking about is a lot of times it's, perhaps you've sent out that attention somewhere, right? You've asked the question somewhere, like, I want to feel better, or I want to know more, but the actual experience is spontaneous. And that's how it's been for me. When I first started, going on podcasts, however many years ago, people always wanted my pain story. They always wanted to know, okay, when did your life get really, really hard and the really big struggle that made you do the thing that you do now? And like even saying it, tanks my energy a little bit, because it wasn't like that at all. And yeah, I was experiencing struggles and things in my life that did lead me to seek some support. Like parenting was a huge catalyst for me, but not because it was terrible, because it was bringing up stuff in myself that I wanted to address. And in so doing, I was attracting the people, that were going to help me on all aspects of my journey. Right. But it wasn't the case that one needs to, reach a breaking point. It was more that I got to that place in my life where I was ready. That was it. I was ready. And that readiness can look a lot of different ways. And sometimes the answer to that readiness can be one of these profound, spontaneous spiritual experiences.
Yeah, you're making me think about a way to frame it is, first of all, let me get back to what is Kundalini.
Yeah,
I
let's
mean,
do it.
personally, I don't really like the word itself because it can be very confusing, and it's weighted very heavily with Eastern, philosophy. But what it is a life force energy that we all have. If we didn't have it, we would not be in this body right now.
Right.
It is a life force energy that is either running with, let's say, a trickle through us, or it expands and you can literally feel the energy moving through your body, and you can feel it moving through your hands. And sometimes it feels like electricity. It is the energy of awareness itself, being aware. That's the best way I've heard it being put. And it is an electrical current. But where it lies in the electromagnetic spectrum, we have yet to figure that out scientifically.
So it
I'm
can't
one of
be
these people,
measured.
that's my guess. It will be soon.
Okay. But as of right
Because
now,
you
it
can
is
feel
not.
it. Yeah,
Yeah.
you can definitely feel it. And I hear there are some studies with subtle energy where people are starting to be able to, it's like you find people who can bring up Kundalini energy. It's like itself, and then it activates. Like as I'm talking about it, I actually get it's activating in my hands. It's just interesting how that works.
And it's linked to the more yogic tradition, but most esoteric traditions have some way of describing the life force energy, like
Everything.
prana,
It
chi,
all
and I'm
does.
sure even Christian religions, if you look at more of the esoteric, have
Yes,
that.
it's the possession of the Holy Spirit.
There you go.
It
Yeah.
is, and
True.
it's of course is it's a human, it's not something that just belongs to the Eastern philosophy. It is literally a human experience. It is part
Right.
of what I call being superhuman when we tap into this. It's our innate superhuman capacity. Like I really believe that we are all meant to be in a greater state of conscious awareness rather than, just being stuck in the day-to-day awareness, and in that greater sense of what we could all as humans do is we have access to being to heal, to be psychic, to be clairvoyant, like we and to see synchronicities. This is all innately within us. It's like it's some people have access to it, because either it runs in your family. There's some genetic
Well, this
markers
is
to that,
psychic
which is
ability runs in your
fascinating.
family or Kundalini, because everyone has Kundalini energy, right? I
Yeah,
want to I want to
yeah,
make that
definitely.
clear. My
Sorry.
understanding is, so we all have this, right? And my guess is we're going to talk about the psychic stuff in a bit.
Yeah.
But we all have this Kundalini energy. It's part of our human energy system. People see it. People that see energy probably can, that people that have that sixth sensibility to see it can see it. And many of us can feel it. I know that I feel the movement of energy in my body. And the guides keep nudging me too to say, because I'm a very kinesthetic person, so I feel everything. So,
Yeah.
if I'm painting, I can feel, like, oh my God, this is coming from my first chakra. But there are also ways to experience this that are not with the felt sense. I have, encountered
Yeah.
people that's, they may see it, or they may have it, just like I'm not a very visual intuitive. There are people that's their primary sense. So you can
Hmm.
intuit it is the way to describe it, though for many it's a felt sense. But my understanding, Corinne, and stop me if I'm wrong, is we all got the Kundalini, and the awakening process, or the activation process, if you're in that particular way of understanding things, is when it just gets stronger and clearer and is moving more through our being.
But the way I like to think about it is it expands, going from a trickle to a fire hose
Okay,
of
beautiful.
energy. And as it grows out into a fire hose, what happens is you become more aware of the things that are usually only deciphered by your subconscious.
Love that.
Okay, so what happens is it's like you're seeing what's there, but you now can, all of a sudden, like, oh, wow, I can actually see auras now. How interesting is that? Wow, I didn't even know that that was there. It's like you can actually see things, hear things that your senses may not have been able to pick up before, because my own personal theory is that, it's like we block those things out because we have so much information coming into our brains anyway. We need to decipher that in this world. But when Kundalini energy expands itself, then our awareness of what information comes in expands as
Beautiful.
well.
That's
I mean, it's,
beautiful.
yeah,
And I think many of us early on have been conditioned. The brain is
yeah,
a filter.
yeah,
Probably our whole energy system is a filter. So we've
yeah.
been conditioned to tamp it down a little bit until we, get the memo to turn it back up. And so my guess is this can happen gradually through practices, but for some of us, it happens suddenly just because.
Yeah. And it depends on who you talk to. Some people will say, "Oh, you've earned that in a past life." Some people will say, "Oh, it's part of your family lineage." Some people will say it's just spontaneous. And
Yeah.
really, even though like I am a mystic, I look at the data. I like science. That's why I went down the whole academic road. And that's why I've been looking at all the research studies that have come out and looking at different people's experiences around this and how it varies. And then what's the same? So this is, I find looking at these, let's call them more spiritual phenomenon in a very practical way, helps us be able to understand it better, to make it practical and repeatable, and to make our lives better in a way that is just very, very, it's clear we have a method.
All right. So talk
Yeah.
about what the research shows about these experiences.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. Let's see so much. Actually, if you don't mind, I can never keep this all in my brain. Hold on here. These are some things that really, really surprise me. One of the things is, the physical sensations. Many people feel that. Most people have had these sudden spiritual awakenings. 85% of them feel energy flow.
Okay.
Some people have the difference between a sudden spiritual awakening and Kundalini awakening. It's literally just the feeling of energy. It's just a technical term.
Okay.
Um,
So a spiritual
yeah,
awakening could be a sense of oneness, sudden connection with just, everything is love and I love
yes.
everything, a deep sense of calm or bliss,
Yeah.
but a Kundalini awakening involves some experience of the movement of energy. Did I?
Yes,
Okay,
it
cool.
does. And for some people, it's it's not a pleasant experience.
Okay.
Not the majority, though. The majority of the people, it's a very pleasant and very blissful experience. And for some people, the energy feels like it's like you're sticking your hand in a light socket. Some people they find themselves doing what they call kriyas, which is their body wants to move to integrate the energy. So they end up doing these poses that actually look a lot like yoga poses, which is fascinating, which is because their meridians are trying to clear the energy in order
To
to
get the
utilize
flow.
it.
And they're doing this spontaneously.
That can happen, yes, absolutely spontaneously.
So let me throw one at you. So I've had a lot of experiences for sure over
Yeah.
over this body's journey. But one that happened that sounds a little bit like this. One thing that started happening when I moved to San Diego was I started having these like orgasmic kind of experiences
Yeah.
looking at plant life. Like I would be
Oh,
like driving and I would see those beautiful like bougainvillea and it was all kind of new to me, and I would just like feel like the energy like rising up from that
yeah.
first chakra and it would feel orgasmic through my whole body. And I was like, so that would be an example of a Kundalini kind of jam.
100%. And what's really interesting, the very first YouTube post I made, okay, I was like, okay, I'm finally going to do this. I'm going to talk about this. And it was when I was feeling waves of bliss like that. Because sometimes when I feel Kundalini energy moving through me, it feels like it's that bliss. You feel it oozing out of you, and people all of a sudden go, wow, you're glowing. What are you doing? People can feel it. But
Yeah.
I actually put a post on YouTube that said, this is what it feels like to have Kundalini moving through you. And it's funny, that one got like 100,000 views. And then I
I
I
bet
got
it did.
embarrassed and I unpublished it for a while.
No, you're
I
fine.
republished it again, but I got
It's
embarrassed. I was
adorable.
like, oh my God. But yes, that is when it's in balance. Okay. So let me talk about different and why you hear the old traditions talk about you have to prepare yourself for this. There is a reason. So what you were experiencing, the bliss, is indeed balanced Kundalini energy.
Right.
Okay. So what happens when people try to force it awake? Let's say sometimes it happens through psychedelic journey. Sometimes it can happen through doing breath work, or an intentional path of I'm going to awaken this Kundalini energy. What ends up happening is you suddenly end up imagine your consciousness that has repressed all this subconscious information because that's all your brain can really handle all the things that have been kept in place to keep your ego identity intact. Now, suddenly, you've got Kundalini moving through you, and all of a sudden, all those things that have been in your subconscious that maybe you haven't worked on yet because you haven't done the personal development work will come out and they're going to be in your face.
Right.
Okay, so people talk, that's what people do talk about. Oh my God, I had a Kundalini awakening and it was awful because, all of a sudden, like it's like basically I had to face your shadow. You have to face the piece. You have to do the personal development work and also learn how to have a still mind. Those things are like really, really crucial in order for the energy to be balanced and to feel it in that bliss state.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I had an experience like that in San Diego too. I don't talk
Ooh.
about it a lot on the show. Um, but I had about 6 months into moving here when I found myself, my son had been living with me. My ex had been living with me. Everyone was gone. And here I was
Yeah.
living alone for the first time in 3 decades, in a place where I realized I didn't know a single person except for my, 29-year-old real estate broker, who's awesome. And we have lunch sometimes, but it wasn't, it wasn't going to like totally get the job done. Um, and I had like a big experience. And what it felt like to me and what it intuited to me was my energy, because I had, I knew what I wanted and my energy skyrocketed. And, I was already living at a pretty high level, but there were a lot of things, a lot of people, a lot of things, a lot of my life that I was ready to let go of kind of all at once to get where I wanted to go next. And I really had the experience that, my energy skyrocketed up, a few octaves, as you
Yeah,
say.
yeah.
And then the rest of me had to catch up. And in that time, I would even remember like my teacher was like holding my hand through most of it. But there were times when I was like, I can't talk to her. Her vibration is too high.
Oh,
And
wow.
it's just like, it was like, it made it worse, not better. Right. And one of the things I learned from that period, I wouldn't wish it on my worst enemy. And at the same time, I feel like sometimes, the shortest point between, where you are and where you want to go is through the snake pit. So yeah, yeah, you get the venom and, gets you where you want to go later on. But what I learned from that, and this is why I'm sharing this story, it deepened my level of presence so very much because that's the only thing I had to go on. I learned to be so present, so much
Hmm.
more when I do my work. Like naturally, you pop in. You can't do what I do without being present. But in my own life, I developed a sense of presence, and it's had less. I mean, now
Yeah.
now I feel really good a lot of the time. And when I go out of alignment, I have that presence to go, okay, I know what to do now.
Yeah.
So it was monumentous. But would that count as a Kundalini experience?
It sounds like it.
Yeah.
Sounds like it to me.
That one
That's
was less
another,
fun. But again,
yeah.
friends, it doesn't have to be hard. Just
No, it
sometimes,
doesn't.
this
It,
we attract
yeah.
the way it felt to me was this was just the fastest way to get to from point A to point B. And I was like, I'm up for it.
Yeah. Well, it makes a lot of sense. And that's part of what I love doing is, let's say, debunking the myths around Kundalini, because when people understand, like, oh, yeah, you're tapping into bliss, or, you're having an experience where your energy is expanding, but you're feeling very sensitive, and how to build on it.
Right.
Instead of saying, oh, that wasn't Kundalini or that wasn't this, it's to really understand, like, oh, hey, that's a doorway to walk through. It's a doorway for growth.
Right.
Those are things I wish I would have known. It's taken me years of research and talking to so many people and finding wonderful things like the Emerging Sciences Foundation, who focus on Kundalini research, to learn what these things were. But also, and I wanted to say, just because someone can have a blissful Kundalini experience doesn't mean the next time you go through, I call them Kundalini expansions because that's how
Right.
it's been like for me and other people I know. It sounds like you too. You grow to the next step, doesn't mean it's always going to be comfortable.
Right.
Like one of the ones I had when I was in Santa Fe, this was, I think, was it 2010, 2011? A bunch of people had experiences then as well, which was so fascinating. I was like, oh, wow, we get a bunch more people who've had these experiences. But then it was like all of a sudden, like I could feel energy when I walked into a room, which is something that I thought I felt before, but this was like, oh, okay, now I get it. Now it's hard for me to go to the grocery store.
Right.
Now, and I would vacillate between bliss, where I literally just wanted to sit and meditate all day. And there were times when I would sit entire half days when my son was in school. And I'm like, okay, I'm just going to meditate in this bliss. But you can't talk, you can't do anything. And
That
then
was
it was
Eckhart
fun.
Tolle's experience too. He talks about the first couple of years, or I don't know the
Yeah.
timeline, but that he was like, I was just sitting blissed out on a park bench, and then every once in a while, I would get a menial job because I needed to eat and stuff, and then I'd just go back to sitting on the park bench. He said
Yeah.
I was doing a lot more my being my being to doing ratio was not
Yeah.
super, because I was just
Yeah, you
good.
just don't feel like it. See, but I had a
Yeah.
son to take care of, so it was like, okay, you don't
So you
get to
needed to
sit there.
function,
You
right?
got to function. And I learned, this is where I learned some of the energetic, I call them energy management tools, that I use even today, because I was so sensitive. I mean, I knew I was before, but this would vacillate between like, okay, I feel bliss and oh no, I'm getting upset about something. It's like, oh no, because as soon as I would get upset, that bliss would turn into like fire in my veins.
And I think we
'Cause that's
talked
out of
about,
phase. 'Cause that's out
yeah,
of phase. The
yeah.
energy's out of phase. Yeah.
And we talked about this a little bit too, in some conversation that was
Yeah.
not prior to the show, but it's my understanding this how it feels to me now, and definitely how it felt to me now during the difficult phase. And how it's been explained to me from the guides is that, it's also a matter of sort of not where you are objectively, but the difference. So as your as your energy expands, you're going to feel those lower bandwidths more acutely than you did before.
Oh, you
And so
feel
part of that
everything. Yeah.
calibration is just, and again, it's not terminal. In my experience, it gets better. And you mostly will stay within a certain range. But the thing is when you fall out of alignment, even if it's just a little bit, you feel a lot more than you would have before when that was your bandwidth.
Yeah, exactly. It's like you're saying, yeah, your bandwidth, and it's because you've expanded amount of information that can come in
Okay.
now.
Different way of understanding
Yeah, and
it,
it's just
but
it's the
yeah,
same thing, just different ways of saying it. And I'm, saying it in the way that I know really helped me to kind of
right.
grasp it and to go, "Oh, okay, now I think I get this." And one of the tools that shocked me that actually worked is I went to see a shaman and she's like, "Okay, what is, it's hard for you to go in the grocery store or anything else, but instead of protecting yourself energetically with the white light, have you
Yeah.
thought of expanding your energy field when you walk into those places?" And I was
Yeah.
like, "Oh,
Yes.
never thought of that." And so I learned, so literally I would go in and then imagine myself spreading out as wide and far as I could. And lo and behold, instead of resisting everything, it all moved through me. And
Yeah.
then I ended up doing Kundalini yoga teacher training because I found that the tools they had, it was funny, the tools they had to awaken Kundalini actually didn't really work for awakening, I found for myself, but they helped to balance the meridians
Right.
and strengthen my energy
So you
field.
can
And
hold the energy.
I see if I don't think of it as holding the
Okay.
energy. I think of it as I'm strengthening my own sense of identity to myself and my soul.
Oh, beautiful.
Okay. And because my sense of connection to my soul is strong, therefore energies that come in do not take it out of balance.
That is so beautifully put.
And it's just like, is it just different perspectives? But
No,
that's
it's
what helps
beautifully put.
me.
I mean, for
Yeah.
me, I think about, years ago too, when the whole empath thing was in my radar. And I think about things
Yeah.
differently now, but the white light and protect yourself. And
I tried all that. Yeah.
Yeah, but to me that was, now looking back, that's super fear-based. And that's, from a law of attraction standpoint, that's focusing on this idea, oh my God,
Oh, that's really funny. I
it's
hadn't thought
like
of
you're
that.
bringing it right to you. But one of my teachers said, and I love this, and this is, think about if you turn up your own light, right? It's the same thing. If you
Yeah.
imagine like, turn up the volume, turn up and then everything just burns away. It's not,
Hadn't
and
thought of
when I
that.
teach
Yeah.
about empaths, that's what I exactly
Hmm.
teach is what you just said, is you learn to rest more in your own vibration, is you learn what your own highest vibration feels like, and you can come back to that and hold that. Nothing else is going to get in the way. And when it does, you can be like, oh, okay. And then you come back,
Yeah.
so I mean, that
Yeah.
to me is the solution.
Yep.
Or a better way to say it, the guys say, is an invitation. It's an invitation.
Hmm.
When you're having these experiences, you're invited to, strengthen your connection with yourself.
There you go. Yeah. Entirely. And it was all about learning how to find the tools that to increase my own energy field and strength and connection to my soul. And of course, like just because it requires constant practice and constant vigilance. I still get, smacked around
You're
sometimes. Like I'm
human?
just human. Yeah, exactly. We're
Yeah.
human, I don't want anyone to think, oh, I have a Kundalini experience. I'll do all these practices and life will be, you know, um, perfect. And I hear a lot of people like a Kundalini experience becomes the pinnacle because they believe that once they have this, that all of a sudden they'll just always be spiritually connected. But a Kundalini experience is just the door. It is
Yeah.
just the door to states of higher perception and a greater sense of, let's say, a greater ability to access the peace of the and ecstatic bliss of the universe itself.
And I think that, and you tell me what you think about this, but I think those peak experiences are beautiful and wonderful. And some of us can maintain them for a really long time. And,
Oh
there
yeah.
are maybe enlightened beings that,
Yeah.
are just living like that on earth. But I don't think that's necessarily the point. I think for many of us, the point is to have those experiences and integrate them into who we are and how we show up every day. That's what my guides have told me about my
100%. Yeah.
particular, like, you're here to be human. Like, that's the
Oh my
deal.
gosh. Yeah,
And
that's
so that's why I teach living in alignment.
yeah.
That's my way of saying you're living in alignment with the soul. But you are here to be a human being, and just more and more you're allowing the divine light of your soul to come in and inform that experience. And that's a different thing than chasing peak experiences or sitting on a hilltop meditating 24/7, which again, if you're called to do that, do that. And I do think there's space holders on this earth that are sitting on mountaintops and meditating for all of us. And if that's your call, you go do that. It's not what I do. But sometimes it's a form of escapism or chasing, avoiding the experience of actually being here and walking the talk of being a spiritual being, having a human experience with all that that means, and doing it with more and more alignment, if we so choose to do it that way.
Yeah, that's something I've had some, let's say, harsh lessons about. Especially like, it's like I think I mentioned, I've always been, very spiritually based. And when I was 17, I found a spiritual teacher and, really got into like daily meditation and journaling and, going into the shadow and like, but also I was very aware of, not watching the news and not going anywhere I felt like was low vibration and like very, that's the word I want to use and be nice. I was very I call it spiritual elitism these
Yeah.
days. It's very like I'm not going to get near anything negative because that's not spiritual.
Right. Well,
But
that's a misunderstanding. Like, I don't watch the news because I just love my vibration, and I love my vibration when I feel
yeah,
good. And so I do things that make me feel good. And I know it doesn't make me feel good. I don't spend my time there because we are
it's
sensitive beings. However, it's not
yeah.
because I think negativity is wrong or bad. And when it finds its way into my space or into my head, it's around taking that loving stance. But yeah, no, I get it.
Yeah.
And you got to do
So
you too.
yeah, exactly. So what I really wanted to say about that, and the lesson that I had to learn because it was a harsh lessons was that everything is spiritual. And I really had to learn this on the,
For
yeah,
sure.
talk about getting smacked. That's a long story for another day. I put part of it in my book too, but I really learned that it's like I had to really think about what is being spiritual? What really does it mean? Is it being loving towards all things? Is it being kind towards all things? Is it a psychic experience? Is that spirituality? Is it my state of mind? What is it? I had to really look at it, but also really start to understand that sometimes what I would define as not spiritual is actually very spiritual because at the other end of it are people who are insanely kind and compassionate and doing amazingly good things for the earth, for the world, even if it might not be somewhere I want to hang out.
Yeah.
So it really like I was very, for example, I was really against doing any kind of substance. I mean, smoking weed, drinking, anything like that. I was like, there's no way anyone who's spiritual could ever do any of that. That was my perspective. And then some of the most spiritual people I met, including Sufi masters, martial arts masters, um, living saints, they would, just sitting around drinking and smoking, for God's sakes. I was like, how is that even possible? So it really, and then also my personal experiences with having to learn those lessons because of my attachment to the old way. I had to learn that no, spirituality is what you make of the moment. It doesn't mean I'm going to put myself somewhere where everybody's, angry, where, like a negative environment. It's like clearly I'm not going to immerse myself in that. But a true master, if they had to be immersed in that, they would be able
Exactly.
to affect positive change no matter where they
You said that
are.
really, really well, right? Like
Yeah.
you can curate a life to some degree that
Yeah.
that feeds your soul, and you can also live life as it flows, right? You can do both of
Yeah.
those things. And you know, and I'm mindful of time, but I can't help myself
Oh,
on this
yeah.
one. Just to be fair, one of the very first early episodes of this podcast, and probably in the first year, was an episode called "Are You Spiritual?" And the
Ooh,
answer is yes. And the answer is yes. We are all
we all
spiritual
are.
beings having a human
Yeah.
experience. You can't answer no to that question. And of course, sometimes we mean like, are you living more understand, thinking about spiritual stuff, like that could be what it means for you to be spiritual. Are you living in more joy? Are you doing good things for the world? Like we could call all of these things spiritual if we want. And, for me, it's about living with joy, with purpose, with a sense of meaning and flow,
Yeah.
like feeling in alignment with my soul. For me, it's like an energetic thing. And yet, no matter what you're doing, how you're showing up, to some degree, you are already spiritual. You can't not be in every experience you're having, be it a Kundalini awakening experience or, sitting on the side of the road smoking a cigarette is a spiritual experience.
Yeah.
The one's
But
not
yeah.
necessarily worse than the other. They're just varieties
Hmm.
of the way that we as spiritual beings experience this human realm.
Hmm. That brings me to two points, two
And
things
if
real
you're a
quick.
smoker, there's no judgment in that.
I
Love you
have no
all.
judgment on any of it
Exactly. I
at
just wanted
all.
to
It's
put
all
that out
God.
there because,
Yeah,
yeah,
entire. I mean, clearly, it's like, I live
you
a
do you,
very
and
ground.
our internal self will show us what's in alignment with us, for us, what our path is, right? And for one person, it might be eating a cheeseburger, and for someone else, it might, be being vegan. When we listen to ourselves, that's where we flow.
Yeah.
All right.
So, okay, what I wanted to say is two quick things. One is, even though like sometimes, being part of the world is you're going to eat a cheeseburger, but okay, something, again, one of my first spiritual teachers taught me is you can't skip ahead spiritually. So, for example, let's say you are in a state where you're meditating, everything's bliss and peace, you're doing great, but then something, triggers you, you get off balance, and then you try to show up in a place where you know you need to be centered, and you go eat your cheeseburger. It's going to affect you a lot differently. It's kind of like you can't skip ahead. It's like you got to get back in your centered state. I mean, not exactly the cheeseburger, but I think you get what I'm trying to say. The
Yeah.
cheeseburger is like the
Again, there are
metaphor.
many
Yeah,
meat-eating
it's
saints.
the metaphor. I eat cheeseburgers every now and
It
then. So,
depends on
but it's
your
yeah, and
your
it's
perspective, right? And
but you
your
can't skip
tradition.
ahead. It's like you can't, let's say, go into the dark places of the world and expect to stay spiritually centered unless you have personally gained a certain level of mastery to begin with.
Fair.
So that is, again, that whole spiritual mastery of learning how to transmute the negativity around you. Yeah.
So just to summarize, because I got one more topic I really want to make sure we get to, and I'm mindful of
Ooh,
time. But
sweet. Yeah.
just to summarize, um, it sounds to me like a lot of what you're saying is, these Kundalini experiences involve the movement of energy. They're spontaneous experiences. They involve like a felt sense of the movement of energy. Sometimes they feel really good. Sometimes they don't feel really good. Sometimes we recognize them as spiritual. Sometimes we don't.
Mm-hmm.
You're not going crazy, right? And there are tools and things that you can use. Some of them you've shared with us, and some I'm sure people can find on your podcast, in your books, in your places that we're going to talk about in a little bit. But there are things that you can do if they're not feeling good to start to feel good. But I just get the sense that it's important for just people to recognize the different ways that these can happen for us and to normalize it, because I think
That's
it's going to
it.
become increasingly common. And,
Yes.
in my experience, those moments of bliss, those moments of just sometimes I was in New York City with my daughter a couple of weeks ago, and I loved everything. I've never done ecstasy. I've been around people doing ecstasy, so I can infer that might be. Like, I was just like, I love you, I love you, I love you, I love this, I love that, I love. I mean, it was just. And those moments, they're priceless. They're beautiful. Is it every moment of my life that I feel like that? Not yet. But I love them when they flow. And, so I think we all have access to this, right?
100%. It's a human quality.
Yeah.
It's completely human.
Beautiful. All right. So the last topic I want to hit, and we brought it up earlier, and it links to the question that I ask everyone on the show, which I'm going to ask you in just a wee little bit. But a lot of traditions do teach, as you're having these Kundalini experiences, right? That part of what happens is that expanded awareness in terms of like psychic abilities or, well, that's a great place to start, right? In terms of, those expanded awarenesses or some of those things. So I'd love to talk about that a little bit. One of my teachers, Karen Garvey, who's been on the show a handful of times, Her intuition opened up spontaneously on 9/11. She lived in the suburbs of New York City on 9/11 and, suddenly started to see what was happening without any connection
Yeah.
to the news um, on her mind, in her mind's eye. And, woke up every morning for about 2 weeks after seeing the newspaper headlines. And she had never had a psychic experience before in her life. Now she's a professional psychic. But again, it was a
Wow.
sudden,
Yeah.
I don't know what's happening here, but it's real, and I got to figure it out. So what's the connection between this kind of psychic
Mhm.
awakening, intuitive awakening, and the Kundalini awakening experience in general?
So it does happen quite often. There's a percentage, I don't have the percentage in front of me at the moment, of that people who experience Kundalini awakenings actually do suddenly find they have, let's call it intuitive gifts, psychic gifts of some kind. But it doesn't, but then that brings up the question, okay, but that's with Kundalini, and then brings up the question of, well, are psychic gifts spiritual gifts?
Right.
I don't know if you want me to talk about that.
We can
So,
we can talk quickly about that. Yeah. I mean,
yeah.
I think to some degree they are. I'm going to tell you what I think, then you can tell me what you think. I think to some degree, for sure, as our awareness expands, our connection to our soul, our source, that broader, connection does expand and they become more accessible to us. But, and we talked about this off camera and off microphone, um, I also have seen many people with profound psychic gifts who I would not necessarily think are, walking the talk of spiritual development. And I think that, we all have these extrasensory abilities. They can be used in lots of different ways. And so at times they go lockstep with our spiritual evolution. But we don't want to make them parlor tricks. We don't want to get hung up on having the abilities because then the ego comes back in. And a lot of people just have these matter of factly and are using them in many different ways that might not be towards their own spiritual evolution. So that's what I think. But what do you
Yeah.
say from your research and from your
Yeah. But,
experience?
it's like really similar, from I've met so many amazing and psychic people, some people literally masters, some people just your everyday scientists, and all kinds of people, and the things, it's really it's a philosophical question. And what I've come up with, and also some people do write about this as well, but I really feel like philosophically I like to mull things over myself and come up with, what do I really believe? And spirit psychic gifts are the result of literally, again, your consciousness expanding into what is already there. You're removing the filter of of being able to see what's really truly already in front of you anyway. We're just removing the filter for our psychic abilities. I mean,
Right.
for our superhuman truth of abilities. And that is a spiritual path. What it seeks to do is um, unlock the frameworks of perception and paradigms that we tell ourselves so that we can perceive the infinite. And what helps and what ends up happening in the process is that our natural abilities, our psychic abilities, will emerge as well. So it's like a natural byproduct. And that's why you hear so many different traditions talk about, don't let the psychic ability actually sidetrack you from the real goal. And then
Right.
you get to what is the real goal. And for me personally, the real goal is to become a full surrendered channel for the divine.
Love that.
That is truly what drives me. It's like that is my spiritual path.
It's
There have
beautiful.
been times when, I really feel surrendered and expanded, and there's not a single synchronicity around me or a single psychic event. It's really interesting how that can happen sometimes.
Yeah.
But then there's also people who naturally tap into these abilities, um, just because it's a human ability.
It
It's
is.
not a spiritual ability. It's just a human ability. And I've seen people use them for good. I've seen people use them for very bad.
Yeah.
Because it's just a tool. It's
Same.
just, some people can,
No,
see
same.
green. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah,
we're
you
on the
can
same
use your
page with that. Yeah.
intelligence to
That's
build,
all it is.
you know, I don't know, build something
Yeah.
amazing for humanity, or you can use it to build a bomb, right?
Yeah,
It's the
exactly.
same tool. And when my intuition, when I was first started doing this work, and I had been doing it a couple years, right? And so now my business is, intuitive guidance. And I remember thinking, what happens if this goes away? Like, what'll I do if the ability,
Oh,
dries
yeah,
up?
yeah.
And here's what came through, and I think it was a really important moment. I said, I'll do the same thing. I'll do the same thing. Like, I'm going to keep on this flow. Like, it's not just I want to teach, I want to support people, I want to
Yeah.
live in alignment with my soul. And I do believe that my gifts and the way that I work are part of my soul's mission. Just like, we all have these ways in which, over many lifetimes, I know I've done this work. And so it comes very naturally to me. And this is how my soul is choosing to
Yeah.
serve. But if it wasn't this, it would be something else along the same lines, because it's not the parlor trick. It's not, it's you. It's what you said so beautifully, just showing up and being, a channel for the divine.
Yeah, and
So,
and along with that, like I really want to address, like a lot of what we're seeing today. I think so many people are getting caught up in the trap of what I call spiritual materialism. It's like only getting involved in a spiritual practice in order to manifest things in their lives,
yeah.
rather than becoming involved in a spiritual practice to learn to surrender to be a creative tool for the divine energy that's moving through us through a deep sense of longing. It's very, very different,
Which will also
you
help you
know?
manifest stuff in your lives. People that have
Yeah,
have followed my show
incredible
know
stuff.
it's the
Yeah,
same snow. It's the same thing, right? When you are a tool for the divine and when you live
yeah.
in alignment, when you let go, you tend to attract in all the great stuff anyway.
You said it right there. Let
It's
go.
just a different way of flowing, and it's a more enjoyable one, right? Because you're more in alignment with your soul and you're letting go of
Yeah.
the need, the perceived human need to control and micromanage your life. Corinne, I ask everyone on the Intuitive Connection podcast, how do you personally experience your intuition?
Oh, it's always fun. So I experience it. There are many different ways. One is through dreams. That's I'd say, number one vehicle. I will dream about something. Usually it's very dramatic in the dream, and then it doesn't happen quite so dramatic in real life, but that's been a theme since I was a little kid. So that's number one. I get precognition through my dreams. Number two is through, like, I will know when someone's going to reach out to me because I will literally feel them. I will feel people in my energetic field. I'll go, oh, I know I'm going to hear from so and so today. And I will just feel. So that's another way. Another way is I actually feel, not all the time, which is interesting, but I do feel people's energy fields. I do feel people when they've had Kundalini experiences. I can tell by shaking someone's hand, which is still a
Wow.
mystery to me why this happens. Like, actually, I had a gentleman on my podcast, Michael Baba, who's a chiropractor, and I laid down at an event and he laid his hands on me. I looked at him, I said, "You've had a Kundalini experience." He's like, "How could you know?"
That's crazy.
And I think it's just because you can feel it's an energetic signature, which tells me it's just energy and electromagnetic spectrum we have not figured out yet. And then let's see. And also my intuition comes through as messages from my ancestors. Every now and then it's like I will literally have a physical object, like my mom actually, who's passed, through long story short, it actually had a painting that fell on my cat bowls. So I knew she was trying to tell me something, and I ended up finding out I had a water leak in my house
Wow.
moments later. So that's another way my intuition comes through. Um, and then if I touch someone, lay hands, I can often get a lot of psychic information about them. And then when I lay hands on people and I feel Kundalini energy move through me, it's funny, I don't know why it's so hard for me to own this, but I actually do heal people of physical ailments and psychological ailments at times by the energy that moves through me. So
Wow.
those are all the intuitive things
So
that I can.
cool.
Oh, and then, okay, wait, there's more.
Oh
So you
my
asked me,
God.
there's more. Okay, I can't do this anymore, but when I was a teenager, I used to do this all the time. And I was very, let's say, clairvoyant and I don't even know what you would call this. I was like a honing pigeon. Someone would be like, "Oh yeah, hey, there's a party like 2.5 hours away from us, and see you there." And I wouldn't have the directions. I'd have nothing, and I go, "Okay, car drive," and I would get to the exact
Okay,
spot.
well, that is the best thing ever. We all need that.
I need that now,
I'm
you
going to try to
know?
get some of that from you. I mean, maybe
It's
we don't now because we have GPS, but the lack of the directions. I think I just saw that in a movie.
I know it's crazy. No, it's crazy
Wait,
that
that just we just went to see
we
Disclosure Day
just
together. That
yes, it
like
was, and I was like, oh, I did that, and
I've
I
done
actually
that. Oh my
and
God.
it's like I the one of the friends who used to be there when I would do that, she's alive and well, and I'm like, Nancy, did I really do that? Yeah, and then you did this, and then she rattles off some more things, and I think so I think the long story short is I use my intuition all the time. It is not available at every single second. I wish it was. But
Well,
it comes and gets me at this point rather than
that's
me
all.
going to get it, you
That's
know?
actually always how it works, even
Yeah.
when it looks otherwise. But all right, we really do have to stop now. I could talk to you forever, but I can't. So we're gonna. I mean, I can, but not on the show. So we're gonna start to wind at least this one down. Corinne, this has been so fun. I want you to share about your work, how people can work with you, where they can find you, and also about the upcoming Transcendence Retreat for those of you who are listening to this when it goes live. Where Corinne will be speaking and sharing, and I'm going to get to go. It's in San Diego, so I get to go see her. Can you share all that with people?
Yeah, sure. Well, first I want to address, this will be in September of 2026, the Transcendence Retreat. I'll be doing a workshop on using Kundalini energy as a tool for transmuting energy. So we talked a little bit about, sometimes there are difficult energies around us. How can we use this instead of resisting?
Beautiful.
So really, I love sharing those things. I've gathered so much that I really want to give to people. So that's what the workshop is all about. And then also like, back to like, what do I teach? You can go to my website, which is wilddivinebliss.com. You think of it as, what is that wild divine bliss? It's that Kundalini bliss moving through you, the creative impulse of the universe. And I love helping people tap into that. And, it's right now I have my podcast and I have the Wild Divine Living, which is a beautiful coaching program where what I do is I lead people who, either have had psychic openings or have a spiritual longing in order and help them find a way to use creativity in their lives, in their businesses, in order to really anchor in, let's call it spiritual perception. And there is a free book on my website called the Synchronicity Handbook, which is a beginning of
Beautiful.
part of those tools. And it really helps you define like, well, how do you look for the different types of synchronicities? How do you define them, even according to like the old school of what Carl Jung actually, how he framed them all, because it wasn't just one. Really taking a look at that and then defining is something as synchronicity, is it clairvoyance, is it clairsentience? Like, what is it? A way to start defining these things to deepen your connection to the universe and to your own soul.
Love it.
So really, it's like really my work ultimately in a few words is help people get in touch with the very essence of their soul. So they're really living from there, creating a deep sense of meaning and peace. And from there emerge so many incredible things. It's like the life transformations that sometimes you're really looking for.
Right. I love that. I love that. So we can work with these spontaneous openings when they happen. We can do things to facilitate more of these spontaneous happenings, and we can mostly just bring more of that soul into our human experience. And I love all of it. So you can check out all of Corinne's offerings on our website. If you're in San Diego, come to the Transcendence Retreat. And of course, friends, we'll have all the links in the show notes. Corinne, any parting words before we wrap this one up?
Yes, I have one. And I
Okay.
like to tell people when you look at the world, the truth always lies in the anomaly. So watch for the anomalies and be like a scientist when you look for them and watch what's happening around you. And don't try to gloss it over if something doesn't fit into your paradigm. Keep track because that's the doorway to the truth is in those anomalies.
Beautiful. I love that. Corinne, thank you so much. This was an honor and a pleasure to have this conversation. I think there's
Likewise.
a lot of wisdom,
Likewise.
a lot of wisdom nuggets. Thank you for everyone. And friends, if you love the show, like, subscribe, share, do the stuff, and keep listening because I say it every time and I can't help myself from saying it just at least once more. I'm so grateful to each and every one of you for tuning in and letting me do what I love to do. So enjoy the rest of your day and namaste.